So, hello, dear friends, and welcome for our webinar on resonant leadership, month 8, with the overall theme of coaching and mentoring. And because coaching and mentoring is really relational, I thought it would be an interesting idea to try a different format this time. Therefore, I've invited Ursula. And thank you very much for accepting my invitation, so that the two of us could have a conversation, a dialogue on the theme of mentoring and coaching. And so it's an experiment. We have not done it before. So we are exploring as we are doing it. We have had a few conversations, but really we don't know what's going to happen. We are improvising. So it's like when jazz musicians are doing a jam session, there's a theme and then musicians improvise. So we will do something like that. We will improvise together. And so I'm looking forward to this opportunity to have a conversation on this theme with Ursula. And basically there will be two parts in this session. The first one will be about why do we need resonant leadership today? And what is the difference between resonant leadership and traditional leadership styles, command and control, top down, and so on? And that probably will be not too long because that's the overall theme of the whole 12 sessions. But I think it's important to describe it again now from this perspective in order to understand why coaching and mentoring play such an important role in the new attitude, the new function, the new posture of a leader and a manager. So it's to put this theme of coaching and mentoring in a bigger picture, in a bigger context, so that you understand clearly why we're speaking about mentoring and coaching at that point in our resonant leadership journey. So that's a short introduction. And with that, I would like to invite Ursula to share whatever she wants to share.
Dear Tor, thank you very much for the invitation to this very inspiring experiment. And dear friends, hello. I guess that this experiment is really what coaching is about, right? Because you have to develop the relationship, and as it starts to flow, the things you're going to talk are coming up, so they are not pre-prepared and you cannot download them. So it takes our presence to really be in resonance with the person we are talking to find out what are we even talking about. And I just feel, listening to you, that I'm zooming into our own dance, and this is the music that is in when you start doing something together. You find your theme together. And I'm very aware that many of you are very seasoned leaders who have done mentoring and coaching before. So I invite you to not just listen to what we are sharing and trying to uncover, but to really access your own experience and knowing and let it flow, because what Tor and I are doing right now amongst the two of us can happen also amongst all of you in the larger group as you're listening, and we'll be debriefing. So invitation to access your own experience. Now, Tor, I feel I felt when we started talking about this, it's really important to have a deep understanding. Why do we even bother about moving from a more hierarchical approach to a resonant leadership approach? Because you could say, oh, in a hierarchical leadership approach, this has been working for a long time, very well. You have things under control. you are, as the leader, responsible for everything that happens, and the people you're leading, they can always point to you. So from the perspective of the followers, it's easy also. Why would we want to break that pattern? Why would we want to move in something that seems so much more unknown, difficult, tedious? Can you say what made you think about it that way?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Also, that's a great question. And it's not an easy question, frankly speaking. But I'm deeply convinced that it has to do with the evolution of human consciousness.
Mm.
So
Mm.
my perspective is that social forms are neither natural laws nor are they God-given, but they are really the manifestation, the expression of what we think, what we say, what we feel, the way we act, so of human consciousness.
Mhm.
And my deep view on it is that the whole of history, including our own biography, is about evolution of consciousness. And the evolution of consciousness is an evolution, I believe, that goes towards more freedom, that goes towards more awareness, mindfulness, towards more compassion, towards more kindness, towards more care. And when you look at the world around us, you might say, well, that sounds pretty, that's an illusion. That's a utopia, because when we look at the world around us, we don't see much of that. We see a lot of destruction and we see a lot of violence, and we don't see that it's this evolution you're speaking about is really happening. And yet, I am deeply convinced that it is happening. But I would like to give you the metaphor of the machine and the plant.
Mhm.
So the traditional system is like a machine. It's mechanical. Therefore, you can control it. You have an overview. You know which part fits in what part of the machine. You can fix it. But it's very limited because it's mechanical, and human beings are not machines. When you look at the development of life, of plants, it doesn't follow these kind of patterns. When you look, for instance, you see sometimes concrete and little cracks in the concrete, and then little sprouts, grass, flowers between the concrete coming up. And you realize that although it seems that the mechanical, the material, is so much stronger, so much more powerful, in reality, life is much more powerful.
Mhm.
And so it's about, can we create organizations, systems, companies, schools, societies that create this space for this evolution of consciousness, where people can be empowered? Because if people are not empowered, are not free, there's no space for love and freedom. So it's something that you develop inside, but it's also something that we have to create the space for, the structure for. That's the one, if you want the big picture. The smaller picture is that the world is becoming so complex that it is an illusion to believe that one person, no matter how talented, how wise, how intelligent they are, could have an overview of the whole situation and know what to do. So we are in a time where we have to move from personal wisdom, personal knowledge to collective wisdom, collective knowledge. And the only way we can move to collective wisdom and knowledge is creating organization, structure, systems where people are empowered to be part of it and to contribute. Otherwise, they simply obey. You give an order, they obey. But that's not empowerment. And I believe that in the future, in the near future, systems that are not able to empower their people will fail.
Thank you. This is so much fun because, you know, what happens when you have a conversation like this, I never expected you to start with the evolution of consciousness, but I think it's perfectly right so. But I like these surprises who make us move into new territory, and it's exactly the example for what you are saying, because as we did give ourselves the freedom to speak as things come up, we can create variation and diversity and the unexpected, which your entry point was the consciousness evolution has been for me right now, that creates more than a machine could ever create. A machine can only create what it has been designed for. But the social form of our conversation right now, when we're being trustful to each other, that we are guiding each other's way, is such that it can create new insights, unexpected turns, reflections. It gives space to each other to move with what's arising and not with what has been predetermined. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And then I would like to maybe go into amplify one aspect you spoke about, which is the social form. So we are neither the machines, nor are we the grass. We are alive human beings. In order to grow, we are coordinating with others. We are coordinating ourselves, our relationships in families, in organizations, in NGOs, corporations, initiatives. So you mentioned that our social form has to develop based on the need that consciousness wants to enter. And that right now, some of our traditional social forms are breaking apart, and we can see this in the world, because in one sense, we are pushing to be freer, but in another way, as the old forms break apart, it turns out we may not be fully mature or fully practiced to use the freedom we have, which then leads to something which appears to be a step backward. So I wonder whether you could explore a little bit on that, how you see the situation. And I imagine as the leaders who are listening to us right now, I've heard in my professional life, I've heard quite a few leaders say, if I open the form of my leadership, I'm facing people who are starting to complain and who don't want to go that way, or who expect me to do things, or who somehow, it's like in the corporation, a small version sometimes happens of what we see in the larger world, that new freedom not always mean that everyone is really happy about it. So can you say a few words about that in terms of the leadership perspective?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. That's, I think, a very important point, because I'm sure that many of the leaders have experienced that. You try to create a free space and people actually feel insecure, and actually many people like to be told what to do. And I think this is related to the fact that we cannot change social forms without developing the inner capability, the inner competencies that allow us to fulfill these new forms.
Mhm.
So it's a circular relationship.
Mhm.
A change of consciousness needs new forms, but new forms need a change of consciousness. And the two will never be fully aligned. One is a bit ahead or one is a little bit below.
Mhm.
So sometimes we go too fast with changing the form and the consciousness doesn't follow. Or sometimes the consciousness already evolved and people are frustrated because the forms are not allowing them to manifest, the impulses that they want to manifest.
Mhm.
Because fundamentally, one of the big difference is that as long as we're on a top-down, hierarchical, command and control kind of form, people just do what they have to do, right? In the same way that in the school system, is if all the emphasis is put on exams, then students learn what they will be tested in the exam, but not what they are really interested in learning. And so they might do brilliantly in the exam, but they are not fully, uh, you know, they don't fully unfold their full potential because they're learning for the exam. In the same way, if in the company you are just working towards the KPI that you've been assigned to, or the form which will be controlled at the end of the year of something, then you don't unfold your full potential. You just make sure you do what you have to do so that you don't get in trouble. But as long as you do that, there's a discrepancy
Mhm.
between your own aspiration, your own values, the meaning of your own life as a human being, and the work you are doing.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's a tragedy because we spend most of our life at work. So if work is not a place where we can fulfill our aspiration, where we can give meaning to our life, where we can have the feeling that we can give a meaningful contributions to society, if that's not the case, it's a very sad thing. Just working for a paycheck is a sort of a depressing situation. And so I think the in a nutshell is how do we as leaders are always attentive to what are the inner development that is needed for people to come to the next phase of consciousness, and what are the social forms that need to transform so that these competencies can unfold and also bear fruits.
That's great. That's great. So I'm just maybe re-emphasizing one aspect of that first part because we are just moving into the second part right now. So the question of moving from a more hierarchical to a more resonant leadership is how do we move beyond co-workers who are compliant towards igniting commitment, inner purpose. Um, and that shift from being compliant to the rules with being committed to contribute to the purpose of the company that is somehow related to the purpose in my own life is something that the new leadership task is about to ignite that flame, right? And I understand that today we are exploring two ways of igniting that flame. One is what you call mentoring, and the other is coaching. And maybe we could start by you giving a small introduction, how the two of them, what they are, their tools in the role of the leader he can use or she can use to help employees to move from just obeying to the task to growing into taking responsibility by themselves, giving space to new ways of dealing with the task, maybe could just explain a little bit what it is for you and what the distinctions are and what the specificities of the two tools are.
So, Ursula, allow me to
Yeah.
send back the question to you.
Oh, okay.
I would be really interested because I know you've worked a lot in corporations, and so you've had a lot of experience with it. So I would really be interested to hear in your experience in corporations, could you observe situation where this happened, and how did it happen? And what were the benefits, if there were benefits? And do you have maybe examples? I know when we had a little conversation beforehand, you spoke about, this idea that oftentimes in corporation, a junior manager get a mentor. So what would be the role of this mentor to accompany a junior manager, or things like that? So I'd be interested to hear also your perspective. Then I'll be happy to share mine too, of course.
Yeah. So let's start with the mentor, right? So for those of you who don't know, I have been working in pharmaceutical industry in various positions and organizations, mostly British, Swiss, or American. And actually, it's really interesting because the first position I took with a Swiss pharmaceutical company is I took the position because my boss, who then turned out to be my mentor at the same time, was so incredibly inspiring. So I think that's the first thing to understand, that the mentor, as someone in my experience as an employee who is inspiring, can make a decision whether or not someone is going to work for you, which was interesting because this I hadn't expected. And the inspiration was that I'm just speaking out of firsthand my personal experience right now, right? So the inspiration was he wanted to set up a global system of safety for unwanted side effects of pharmaceutical. It was it was a project really that was almost undoable. It was impossible in a way. But the reason that he even considered doing it um, helped me to raise beyond what I thought I could be doing. So I worked so hard. I worked day and night because it triggered something in me, which I know to be part of my biography, which is about social justice. So he wanted to bring about social justice in a place where you expect it least, right? And of course, there was other stuff to it too. But I realized when it really got tough, when I was really challenged, what kept me going was the inspiration he had set out. So that's my experience with a mentor. Then later, as I moved to other companies, I saw that mentoring really meant to have a person who looks at you as someone who wants to grow, who wants to contribute, who understands to guide you, to help you, to help to become more professional on one hand, but also as you're growing into your professional role and you understand better where really your profession is and the techniques you learn to have, who then, because he has the oversight, can match you to opportunities arising in the universe of the corporation, which is not that easy, right? Because as the mentoree, you don't have the kind of oversight. So in my personal experience, a mentor is someone who has a strong idea for themselves where it's not a bureaucracy job, right? It's a leadership job to be a mentor. You want to achieve something and you get a sense who are the people we need to achieve this, and you try to build the capacity, the professional capacity of those people to achieve it. And then you make sure that they get into the places they need to go to be able to release that potential. And as this is happening, in my experience, a network of people is cutting and is being built throughout the organization of like-minded people who are aware of each other, who try to build something together, regardless of in which department, function, and so on they are. So that's the ideal case. The downside, and I mentioned that to you before, the downside is sometimes, at least in some companies in the West, and I don't know, this may be very different in Vietnam because women are so powerful leaders, as I got to know. So I'm very much admiring that. It's used to be, when I was young, a lot men helped men. So women were not part of that mentoring system. But that has changed now. So how about you, Tom?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Three things stand out for me listening to you. One is inspirational. So that's a fundamental quality of true mentorship. It inspires you. The second one, you mentioned social justice. So it means it's value-based. So it's not just like about efficiency, how to make the company more efficient or something like that, but you uncover a value that you share. And that creates this very strong, and you said you were willing to work day and night, and you're not willing to work day and night just to make the company make more money. Willing to work day and night if you feel it's an opportunity to contribute to a value that is very important to you. In this case, it was social justice. And the third element that you mentioned was the mentor is someone who has both an overview of the company itself and the needs of the company, the structure, the system, and who perceives you not as you are today, but your highest potential, who you could become. And I think that's the third quality of a mentor. The mentor is the person who looks at you, not just seeing the limitation of you, who you are today, but seeing what is your potential to develop further. And then is able to align the personal with the organizational. So I think with these three dimensions, we've really pretty much covered what true mentorship is about. It's inspirational, it's value-based, and is our ability to perceive the highest potential of the other one, as well as the potential of the company or the organization, and see how the two could match. So I don't have much to add because I think that covers pretty much what I would say is a true and good mentorship. Of course, mentorship can add any kind of professional skills and things like that. But in the end, that's not so much about that. It's really more about what you've just described. And so if we say that's really what mentoring is about, what is coaching about?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that. Because for everyone to know, that's the question I asked Toby for. No, I just want to emphasize, which became clear to me right now, only that the mentor is someone, in my mind, who is in charge of a line position, himself or herself, and has an agenda on her own that relates to the purpose and the goals of the company and to the performance of the company. While the coaches do, in my experience, the internal coaches. So we are not talking about the consulting coaches coming from the outside. We are talking about coaches from the OD or HR department or within teams within the organization. So they really have not so much the power and position probably to help you to promote through the system who you are as a professional, they are more the people who help you grow and develop who you are as a person. And it might, honestly, it might turn out, and I will give one example, it might turn out that you find out as the coachee, this is not the company where I'm going to be for the rest of my life, because there is just not so much a match between my personal development and the needs of the company. So, for instance, I was working with one global car manufacturer, which we have a lot in Germany, as you know. And they had a rule: you could only become a team leader. So your first promotion from just being a simple engineer or employee to be promoted to the team leader position. So you would have a team of 5 or so engineers working on a very specific technical challenge. You could only be promoted to become a team leader when you were willing to just become a coach and not stay inwardly an engineer. So you needed to understand the engineering task, but you were not meant to solve the problems as an expert, so to speak. You were meant to become the coach of your people. And there are engineers who say, no, I love to be an engineer. I don't want to become a coach. So they would not become a coach. But those who became coaches, in my experience, coaching is really, and engineers have that a lot, a wide open heart and interest in the people they want to coach. They don't have a known agenda in the sense of, I need you to be able to do this or that. They are open to the course of where the coachee wants to come. They ask for the questions the coachee brings themselves. They are forgiving. They always assume that you are your potential is more than what you are showing me right now. So help me to see how that comes along and be just almost like a source of power that lines up with your higher self, the one who you can become in this life, and who speaks out of that place and turns back to the one I have become and invites them to come along and to help find the next step to do that. But in order to be a coach, in my experience, the main driver is really to be interested in the human being in front of you and to really decenter from your own concerns or your own anxieties. So coaching for me is not primarily coaching someone else, it's coaching yourself. It's enabling yourself to create a space for another human being to become more of itself. So that it is for me. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think you've also here again covered a lot, of the essential points of coaching, because the way I see it, coaching, well, for a company to truly become this kind of happy company focusing on the well-being of its people and of its stakeholder, one of the most important ingredients is creating a culture of coaching. Because as we know, in the end, it all boils down to the quality of relationships within the organization. So the quality of relationships within any social organism, being it a family, a classroom, a school, a company, no matter where, wherever we have social structures, social systems, what determines the quality or the quality of the company, of the system, depends directly on the quality of the human relationships. And as you have described, actually, a coaching relationship that can happen between any two people, because this is not linked with any hierarchical position, it's just two people meeting. This kind of relationship, the way you've described it, is really about what we've been sharing about so often, but it comes always again because it's so central, is the threefold empathy. Open mind, so cognitive empathy, that we don't try to impose our ideas on the coachee, but we are open and try to understand their perspective, their view, their idea, their opinion. Emotional empathy, open heart, and what the person is experiencing, and acknowledging that any experience that someone has is valid. It cannot be judged. This is what the person feels. The question is not, is it right or wrong? The question is, how can I support or how can I understand why a person feels the way they feel?
Yeah.
And then finally, open will. It's not about, sometimes the mentor does put a goal for the mentee, not the coach. The coach is trying to understand, what do you want? And how can I support you in reaching what you want? Not what I want or what I think the company wants or anything like that. So it's a very, very, in the end, it's a relationship based on love. Because interest, you spoke about interest. Interest is the first component. We cannot love someone if we are not really interested in them. And this interest, this generates care and compassion and in the end, love. So I really think that a coaching culture, if we manage to develop more and more in coaching culture within an organization, it is probably one of the most important things that we can do in order to create this social field where this inner development can take place.
I would like to add one thing that came up for me as you spoke, and that is, I see ourselves moving in this conversation, really describing two kinds of shifts. So, in order to shift from a more hierarchical approach of leadership to a more resident approach of leadership, with the means of mentoring and coaching, there are really two things happening. The mentoring culture, I think, is trying to strengthen the expert culture of the organization and the professional culture, while the coaching culture is strengthening and supporting the humanity of the organization, but also very clearly its attractiveness to young people who are very, very much looking for that part. What is interesting to me is that for a long time, and I think that's related to the hierarchical culture, we have been assuming, at least in corporations, that being experts of something, building cars, creating pharmaceuticals, selling life insurance, selling something, producing, is enough. We thought knowing and being experts is good enough. But now it turns out we need something more, and that is making sense in humans, people's lives. And this is why it's so important to create that coaching culture as well. And it does not mean that we don't expect people to be professionals and experts, but it means to be a professional on how we are being humans for the sake of relating, collaborating, and creating action that is values-based and not just, as an expert, you can do many things, but you may not want to do everything you can do because there are other criteria for developing the action. So I think it's really important that there are two cultures that are equally important, but that globally we can observe there's a shift from the expert culture becoming more aware of the importance of the coaching culture. Sorry, I just wanted to really amplify that.
Thank you very much, Ursula. I think our time is more or less over. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I hope our listeners will also enjoy the conversation. I think I really honestly think that I've deepened my own understanding just in this conversation of what it is and why it's so important. And I hope that it will encourage and inspire all the GNH Masterclass participants to consciously, as leaders, as managers, to develop their mentoring and coaching competencies as a very important part of what we're doing together during this masterclass. So once again, Ursula, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Tom. Thank you.
And
Thank you
bye-bye,
for
all
being.
participants, and looking forward to seeing you again, hopefully soon.